So hello and welcome along to another edition of Isolation Interviews for Hospital Radio and for my YouTube channel. And I'm super excited that my guest is the very talented Ruby Wax. Thank you so much for joining me.
Sure. Thanks for asking me. I think it's really, a great thing you're doing.
Oh, that's very kind of you to say.
Next time I'm going to say anything nice.
Now, of course, this last year has been very tough for a lot of people. Well, the last year and a half, really. I mean, for you, how have you found coping with this new way of the world and just the way things are?
Well, I'm hoping that people have learned a little bit from being in lockdown, and I don't want to, do my sales pitch, but my book just came out, which is, don't think I'm doing a sales pitch, A Mindfulness Guide for Survival, which I wrote during the pandemic because I was running Frazzled Cafes, which is, what can I say? I've been running it for 4 years, where people can come on and just speak from the heart. It's free. And I started running it once the pandemic started, every night. So that was like my church in a way, where you can give back, and you see about 80 people from all ethnicity, all from different parts of the world, different colors, different ages, saying, what's going on for them. I always say, what's the weather condition in your mind? So I took what the themes were, and then I wrote a book for how to cope with it. So in writing that, that gave me, it's always about me, that gave me, it's a journal, a place to really reflect on what was going on. What were my habits of thinking before the pandemic started?
So, but yeah, so obviously with the book, was that something that came about quite naturally, or was that something that was always the plan to put this book together?
Well, it was always the plan during the pandemic. So I was gathering information without, I think because it went on so long, I was only commissioned halfway through, but I've been taking notes as to, really the roller coaster ride people were going through and what were their biggest fears. And so not to face them is almost as bad as facing them, but we have to know our reactions to certain realities, change, uncertainty, loneliness. I mean, we were all lonely before, I was. So let's look at it now and get an anchor so that the seas don't get as rough as they did during the pandemic. Because life goes on, and now let's face it, but let's have a little more insight.
I mean, that's one thing, obviously mental health is so important, and it's so crucial to look after it because it doesn't take much to flip people over the edge. So, I mean, for you, what have you found to be good ways of looking after your mental health?
Well, the way for me is not the way for the next guy, because I always say we're all different fingerprints. But I mean, I tried everything, it was like a smorgasbord of therapies. And at a certain point in my life, 15 years ago, I started researching it. I got obsessed. So I looked at the scientific evidence, and mindfulness, which I never heard of before, and cognitive therapy had not 100%, but the most interesting results. So I wanted to learn what happens in the brain, but I'm a woman who's got an obsession with finding out answers. So I ended up getting a master's at Oxford. And as I say, they weren't teaching witchcraft. So I thought there must be something to it. And so my thing is mindfulness. It's not for everybody. But the book I've written is not just mindfulness. I think you have to get to know yourself. And however you do that, and the most important thing is to learn how to lower our stress. Because if you don't, you're open to almost a whole potpourri of illnesses that if the mothership gets too riled, and we're living in an age where it's chronic, we're all supposed to deal with, something terrible happening, but then we used to know how to pull it down. Now everything, things that are physical, things that are mental, things that are on social media. I'm not saying shut it down because it's here, but pick your enemy. Otherwise you'll overflow. So, I do mindfulness. You could do Tai Chi. You could, any training where you bring down the mind into the body. It's a relief because the body can take the strain and the mind can't. So there's a number of ways. It's just, I happen to pick mindfulness.
You must be so happy with the response that you've had from, the book being released. I mean, it seems to have gone down so well. So, I mean, what have you taken from the response from fans and people out there?
You mean from the new book?
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to do a live show, and I'm also uh, uh, launching a 6-week mindfulness course online. I think that I think it might be the zeitgeist because people want to get a braking system, and I think mindfulness is a terrible word. It should be called a brain workout. And people say, "Oh yeah, it's better for your brain if you learn Mandarin or you do Sudoku." Well, it isn't. Unless you don't believe in science, all you're doing is getting better at Sudoku. But mindfulness is a way of literally cooling down the mind, being able to self-regulate and then focus your attention where you want it to focus. Because part of the stress we have is that our attention is pulled in 1,000 directions. That also makes a lot of cortisol.
And I
So
think a lot.
it
Oh,
deals with contemporary problems.
and I was going to say, I mean, a lot of people have obviously been so careful of, over lockdown, looking after their bodies, but they forget about their minds. And obviously, the mind is it's such an important, such an amazing tool that we all have. So to kind of let it slip and to not give it the best and look after it properly is obviously it's such a bad thing. You've got to look after it.
Well, I always say the mind and the body are a onesie, right? So what happens in the mind has a pinball effect all the way down and takes out your immune system. Well, once that's shot, well, then you're open season for everything.
Now, of course, we must talk about your amazing career because you've obviously done acting, you've done comedy. For you, what was it that came first for you? Was there one that sort of you enjoyed more or that you got into first? I mean, how did it come about for you?
You mean my whole career? It was
Yes.
an accident. Yeah. I mean, I ran away from home. I was a terrible actress, but I was always pushy. So after auditioning for every drama school and being rejected with a wimple on my head, trying to do Juliet, and them just going, what does this have to do with anything Shakespeare wrote? Eventually, because I was pushy, I got into a school in Glasgow, the Royal Academy. They were looking for anybody. And then from that, because I worked really hard on my tongue exercises, I got into the Royal Shakespeare Company. And then from there, I wrote not a very small writer on Not the 9 O'Clock News. And then I met Dawn and Jennifer, French and Saunders, and that's where this collaboration started.
I mean, from the first moment you met them, was it always, did you click straight away or did it take time?
Yeah.
And what was that like to kind of get to know them and to work with, obviously, everyone
we were
loves
all
having.
really young. We were young and we didn't know, we knew we wanted to imitate the young ones, but the female version. So we picked these characters and then we worked in my bedsit for about 2 years thinking nobody will ever look at this. And we just sat there eating and laughing. And then suddenly it was on TV. So we were surprised. We were writing to make ourselves laugh.
I mean, that's the thing is the program is obviously it's all around the world. It's watched by millions, and still to this day, people are still watching it. So to be a part of that must be such an honor, and also to know that people still love your work to this day.
I have to be honest, Girls on Top didn't really hold. I don't know, it's not played, and we're really grateful for it. It doesn't have longevity. But then out of that, I got my own talk shows, and that went on for 20 years, and now they're putting them on, they're on Sunday nights after all these years. And that, I think, lasts, because those were movie stars, and now celebrity is people with no talent. So you're getting to see what the real A-list looked like. And because I had days with them, there's an intimacy that you'd never get if you had a talk show.
And I mean, talking to, some amazing people, I mean, was there one for you that just stood out as like a career highlight, speaking to
Oh,
whoever?
all of them. Donald Trump, OJ, all of them. Bette Midler, Goldie, the Spice Girls, it was one after the other. Imelda Marcos. It was like my head was being ripped off. It was so thrilling.
Is there someone you'd love to talk to now if you got the opportunity?
Well, Carrie Fisher was my best friend from that interview. So, I'm devastated with that one. Yeah.
And I mean, obviously, fast forward a bit, and you obviously were working on Absolutely Fabulous, which was again a hit all around the world. So, I mean, to do these amazing projects that are female central shows, you must love doing those sorts of things.
Yeah, I did at the time. I mean, to work with Jennifer's a genius, And so she'd wash me a couple tennis balls, and once in a while I could return them. But she was the big player.
Now, I mean,
So yeah.
so when you first made the decision to obviously move over to the UK, I mean, what was it that enticed you
I
to
can't
come?
even remember. My parents were insane, and I wrote a book about that. Called "How Do You Want Me?" And they were so crazy that Carrie edited it, and she said, "Your parents are almost crazy as mine." And I thought that was a compliment. So I had to get out of America the same way my parents got out of Austria. So it was a trade-off. They were nuts, and you could read the book to see how nuts.
And I mean, of course, you know, you've been here for such a long time, and you basically are now an honorary Brit. I think you obviously, you know, you've been here for a while now. And I mean, what is it you love the most about being in the UK? I mean, is there something in particular that stands out for you?
Well, the sense of humor was my biggest attraction. Like I get them. Whereas in America, I'd say something and they go, "Is that for real?" They wouldn't even know it was a joke. So here, when I tour, everybody gets the joke. When you say something serious, but it's funny underneath, they get it. So I'm with my people here.
And is there a goal? Is there something you would love to do going forward? Sort of something that you haven't had the chance to do just yet?
No, I mean, I think now I want to I want to work in a charity. I'd like to go work in the hospitals. Tell me where to go.
That would be amazing.
Tell me which one to go to. I'm telling you.
So we're based in the Royal Berks in Reading, so in Berkshire.
Yeah.
So next, if you're ever in the area, you're more than welcome to come.
Tell me which one to go to in London.
Oh, so London. I'm trying to think. That I know that there's a radio station based at Marsden, Radio Marsden. So that they would be a good one in London. I can't remember which hospital they're based.
No, I want to work in a hospital.
Oh, in a hospital. Oh, okay. So, I'm trying to think which one would be the best one for. I mean, obviously, there's the I'm trying to remember the name of the famous.
I worked in the Marsden before I started doing TV, and I love that. Now I'm working at St. Charles, giving the injections. So I don't have to ask you, but if you know of I could just go and sign up and say I want to volunteer.
Yeah,
again.
Exactly. I mean,
I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, volunteering is obviously an amazing thing to do, and I thoroughly recommend it if you want to, you can do anything really in a hospital. You can, there's obviously helping people around the hospital. I mean, obviously, hospital radio is another great thing. So there's so many great areas, regardless of what your interests are, to help and give back to the community.
I really like that idea, and I did it before. And now I have a kind of yearning to do it again. I'm not just saying that, but I am starting at St. Charles next week.
Oh, wow.
I've already done one, but okay, I'm going back.
No, I mean, obviously, there's people, the NHS have been amazing. We've talked about it a little bit, but I mean, for you, what was the one thing you've taken away from the last year and a half that, about the NHS, about the amazing work that they've been doing over this whole pandemic and even before the pandemic?
Well, they're the angels. We should worship them, and they should be number one on our list of rewarding people, because it's unusual, especially in America, to be so giving. I mean, it's astounding to me how this system works. So they should all get OBEs, all of them.
Completely agree. Now, Now, I was going to say, just before we go, is there any messages you'd like to give to anyone who's currently stuck in hospital at the moment? Anything you'd like to say to them?
Well, you can still do mindfulness in the hospital. You can get my book or listen to a tape of John Kabat-Zinn or even Headspace, because if you get too stressed, you're adding on the damage. Somebody said, pain is pain, but suffering is optional. I know that sounds easy. And if it's really chronic, don't listen to me, take the medication. But if you feel centered and you're there, do yourself a favor and cool your engines. But I send my love.
Thank you so much, Ruby. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Of course, keep safe. And thank you again for giving up your time.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Perfect.